You know what's wild? According to career change statistics, 49% of people say they've made a dramatic career switch, but most waited an average of 11 years before taking the leap. Today's story about a successful engineer turned photographer might change how you think about that waiting period.
That's fascinating, and it really puts David Parker's journey into perspective. Here's someone who broke free from that holding pattern after seeing the northern lights in Iceland.
Mm-hmm. And what strikes me most is how his childhood interests, photography and stars, were basically sending him signals his whole life. It's like we're conditioned to ignore these early passions, right?
Well, that's exactly what makes this story so compelling. He didn't just quit his engineering job on a whim, he took this measured approach, testing the waters with part time work first.
You know, studies show that people who make successful career transitions usually spend 12 to 18 months in this kind of bridge period. Exactly what David did. It's like he intuitively followed the playbook for career change success.
Hmm, that's interesting because most people think career changes happen overnight. But what about the financial aspect? I mean, engineering salaries typically range from $80,000 to $130,000.
Oh man, that's what makes his leap even more remarkable. Professional photographers average around $45,000 starting out. But here's the thing, research shows that 87% of career changers report being happier after their switch, even with lower initial income.
That really puts things in perspective. And you know what's fascinating? The role that external validation played. Winning that photo contest seemed to be his tipping point.
Right. Well, psychology research suggests that external validation often serves as a crucial catalyst for major life changes. It's like our brains need that outside confirmation to override our internal doubts.
So, if we look at the broader picture, what makes his particular transition story stand out from others?
Well, I think it's the perfect storm of elements. First, you've got this dramatic moment of clarity under the northern lights, which, by the way, only about 2% of people ever get to see in person. Then there's the childhood passion resurfacing, and finally that contest win providing validation.
That's such a powerful combination, and it challenges the common belief that you need to have your life figured out early on.
Exactly. And get this, studies show that only about 27% of college graduates end up in careers related to their majors. So David's story is actually more common than we might think.
Though what really sets his story apart is how he approached the transition, methodically building skills while maintaining his stability.
You know, that reminds me of something interesting. Career counselors often talk about the 70-20-10 rule. 70% learning through experience, 20% through relationships, and 10% through formal education. David's journey seems to follow that pattern perfectly.
That's exactly what makes this so applicable to others. He didn't just dream, he put in the work, built a portfolio, and created a safety net.
And speaking of safety nets, here's something wild. Research indicates that successful career changers typically save enough to cover 6 to 12 months of expenses before making their final leap. It's like they're building a bridge while they're crossing it.
Well, that certainly adds another layer to his be bold advice. It's not just about courage, it's about smart preparation too.
Um, yeah, and you know what's really interesting? Studies show that people who make major life changes in their 30s and 40s often have higher success rates than those who try earlier. They bring more life experience and professional skills to their new ventures.
That's such an encouraging statistic for anyone feeling stuck in their current career path.
Looking toward the future, what fascinates me is how automation might actually make these kinds of transitions more common. Some experts predict that the average person will change careers. Not just jobs, but careers. 5 to 7 times in their lifetime.
That really reframes David's story as less of an exception and more of a preview of what's to come.
So I guess the real takeaway here isn't just about following your dreams. It's about being adaptable and recognizing that our paths aren't set in stone. Like David showed us, sometimes the best careers are the ones we never even considered possible.
And maybe that's the most valuable lesson, that it's never too late to rewrite your story as long as you're willing to do the work to make it happen.
Well, as we wrap up, here's one final thought. According to happiness researchers, the biggest regret people report at the end of their lives isn't taking risks that failed. It's not taking them at all. David's story reminds us why that matters.